My name is Lelia Parman, 37 years old. Last January, my mother burst into my kitchen, slammed a folder down, and shouted, "Sign the papers right now. Transfer your house to the family. Your sister needs the money for her new life, and you owe us this." When I refused, she slapped me so hard across the face that my ear rang. My sister stood there watching and sneered, "Just sign it, you selfish bitch. You've always been the useless one who never helps this family." My father sat silently in the truck outside. They left thinking I would break, like I had for 9 years of sending them $650 every month. They had no idea their own bank would call me 3 months later, and that I would answer with 4 cold words. "I already know everything." Before I continue, please like and subscribe, but only if you're tired of family who believe your entire life belongs to them. And drop your city and your local time in the comments. I read every one of them, and I want to know who's out there tonight. I'm Lelia. This is the story of how 9 years of being the family's quiet daughter ended with one phone call. To understand what that call destroyed, you need to see my life the way it looked last December. Small, quiet, and paid for. Every piece of it. I work as an ultrasound technician at Crestline Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. I've done it for 15 years. People think my job is about machines, but it's really about attention. Half my job is finding the thing nobody wants to look at. You learn to catch the shadow at the edge of the screen, the shape that doesn't belong, the small irregularity everyone else's eyes slide past. You learn that the truth doesn't announce itself. It sits quietly in the corner of the image, waiting for someone trained to see it. I wish I could tell you I applied that skill to my own family sooner. My house sits on Maplewood Court in Grove City, on the south side of Columbus. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window over the sink. I bought it in September of 2023, when I was 35. I remember standing in the empty living room on closing day, holding keys that still had the title company's paper tag on them, thinking that it had taken me 4 years longer than I'd planned. I told myself the delay didn't matter. I told myself a lot of things back then. On my refrigerator, there was a note in my own handwriting. 2 lines. Mortgage, 1st. Transfer, 26th. The first line was my house. The second line, I didn't explain to anyone. Not to my coworkers, not to my neighbors. It had been there so long it had stopped looking like a decision and started looking like furniture. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, on the evening of November 28th, my phone rang. The screen lit up with one word. Mom. I took a breath before I answered. I always took a breath first. My body had learned something my mind refused to say out loud. Her voice came through warm as bathwater. She asked about work. She asked if I was eating enough. 3 questions. The same 3 she always used. And then the turn. Sweetheart, you know how much this family leans on you. I stood at the kitchen window while she talked, one hand resting on the sill, and gave her the short answers I'd been giving for years. Yes, of course. I understand. Then she said, "Come to your sister's on Sunday. The family has something to discuss about the future." She hung up before I could ask what that meant. I stood there in my quiet kitchen, in the house I had paid for with my own hands, and I couldn't understand why an invitation from my own mother sounded like a summons. To understand why my shoulders tightened at the word family, I have to take you back further. Long before the folder, long before the slap. In my family, there were always 2 kinds of children, the one who received and the one who provided. My sister Heather is 3 years older than me. When she got married in 2010, my parents paid for everything: the venue, the dress, the band, the open bar. I was 21, working my way through my sonography program, and I spent her reception carrying a silver tray through the banquet hall because my mother said hiring 1 more server was a waste of money. I remember weaving between tables of guests toasting my sister's future, my arms aching, and my mother catching my elbow near the kitchen door. "Heather only gets married once," she told me. "You'll understand when it's your turn." My turn never came, but my bill did. Every month. My mother, Linda, ran our family the way some people run small countries. She kept everyone's paperwork in a gray 2-drawer filing cabinet in the Newark house: birth certificates, insurance policies, bank documents. "For convenience," she said. The bottom drawer had a lock, and in all my years in that house, I never once saw it open. Relatives used to say it with admiration. "Linda runs that family's money better than any bank." It took me 2 decades to understand what that sentence actually meant. The person who keeps the papers keeps the truth. My father, Earl, was different. He was a mechanic for 40 years, a man whose love arrived through his hands instead of his mouth. He never told me he was proud of me. He changed my oil. He built the bookshelf in my first apartment. When my old sedan started making a noise in college, he called and said, "Bring the car by Sunday. I don't trust those shops." The smell of motor oil in his garage is still, to this day, the smell of safety to me. The last time he worked on my car was the summer of 2017. After that, something in him closed. He stopped calling. At holidays, he'd nod at me from across the room the way you nod at a neighbor whose name you've forgotten. And that September, on my 29th birthday, for the first time in my life, my father didn't call me. My mother called instead, her voice like syrup. "You know your father. He's not good with phones." I sat alone that night with a grocery store cupcake and 1 candle, and I told myself I must have done something. Moved too far away, visited too little, become too independent. I spent 9 years believing the coldness was my fault. 9 years later, I learned that in my father's garage, that very September, there was already a wrapped box with my name on it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before the coldness, before any of it, there was a phone call in February of 2017 that split my life into before and after, and I didn't even feel the cut. My mother called on a Tuesday and told me to come to Newark right away. Her voice was shaking. When I walked into the kitchen of my childhood home, there was a box of tissues already sitting in the middle of the table, positioned like a prop that had been waiting for its scene. She was crying before I sat down. "They're going to take the house, Lelia." Her hands trembled around a coffee mug. "The bank. We're behind. We're so far behind. Your father can't know how bad it is. It would kill him. His heart. His pride. Promise me he won't know." I was 28 years old, and I watched my mother, the woman who ran everything, who never showed weakness, fall apart at her own kitchen table. Some part of me should have paused at the strangeness of it, saving the house but hiding it from the man whose name was on it. Instead, I reached for her hand. She slid a piece of paper across the table. A bank statement. The logo at the top, the columns of numbers, a balance that made my stomach drop. My eyes caught something small in the corner, a line of fine print, a date. And before I could focus on it, she took the paper back and folded it away. "You don't need to keep this," she murmured, tucking it into her purse. "Numbers just scare you, sweetheart." 9 years later, I would understand that half a second cost me $70,000. Then she named the figure. 650. That's the gap every month. Not a dollar more. She squeezed my hand. "Your mother would never take more than she needs." 650. Such a specific number. Not 500, not 1,000. Specific enough to sound like arithmetic instead of appetite. That specificity was the most convincing thing she ever built. That night, sitting on my old twin bed, I set up an automatic transfer on my phone. Repeat monthly. Day 26. I remember thinking I was buying my family's peace on an installment plan. I didn't know I was signing a lease on my own role in that family. The provider, the quiet one, the daughter who fixes things and doesn't ask questions. I stayed over that night. Sometime after 11, I passed my parents' bedroom on the way to the bathroom and heard my mother's voice through the door, low and controlled, nothing like the trembling woman from the kitchen. Just one sentence reached me through the gap of light at the floor. Just let me handle her part. Her part. I stood in the dark hallway and told myself she meant the bills. It was easier than asking whose voice was on the other end, or what exactly was being divided. The next 9 years moved the way a treadmill moves. Enormous effort. No distance. The transfer went out on the 26th of every month, so I picked up weekend shifts to cover it. Saturdays, Sundays, holiday rotations nobody wanted. I wore through 3 pairs of work shoes. My coworker Denise, who ran the front desk and missed nothing, finally cornered me in the break room in my 3rd year of it. "You've worked every Saturday for 3 years. She stirred her coffee without looking away from me. "Who exactly are you saving?" "My family," I told her. And even as I heard myself say it, a small cold thought surfaced. In 3 years, I had never seen a bill, a notice, a statement. Not one receipt from the debt I was rescuing. I pushed the thought back under. Good daughters don't audit their mothers. There was a rhythm to it, and the rhythm was the trap. The money left my account on the 26th. And on the 28th, every month, without fail, my mother called. Grateful, weary, full of updates. "The bank called again, but we're surviving. Thanks to you, sweetheart." For years I heard that regularity is love. It didn't occur to me that machines are regular too. Meanwhile, my father kept drifting. The calls thinned, then stopped. When he did speak to me, it was in messages routed around the distance between us. Once, when I dropped something off at the house, he stood in the driveway and told me, "Tell your mother I put air in her tires." He was speaking to me, standing 3 feet from me, and calling his own wife, "your mother," like I was a courier between strangers. I drove home that day and cried at a stoplight. And then I did what I always did. I made up a reason for him. He's tired. He's private. He's from a generation that doesn't talk. The truth was worse than any reason I invented. He wasn't cold to me. He was cold to a daughter who didn't exist. A daughter someone had built for him out of words, one small lie at a time. In September of 2023, I finally bought my house. 4 years late, but mine. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty kitchen and called my mother, stupid with happiness, wanting, even then, even still, for her to be proud of me. There was a pause on the line. Then, "A whole house for one person. Must be nice while your parents count every dollar." Count every dollar. I apologized. I actually apologized for buying myself a home. It would take me 2 more years to learn that she was counting dollars all right, in an account with her own name on it. And then came October of 2025, and the first crack in 9 years of rhythm. My mother called on the 25th, not the 28th, the 25th. 103 months of perfect timing, and suddenly she was 3 days early, her voice bright and strange. "We sold the house, honey, it's done. Closed last week." I sat down. The Newark house. My childhood home. Mom, that's huge. So the debt? It's finally paid off? It's over?" A beat of silence, half a second too long. "The sale barely covered what we owed," she said, the brightness dimming into something rehearsed. "After everything, there was almost nothing left. Don't ask your father about it. It embarrasses him." Barely covered what we owed. I wrote it down in my head like a measurement. And then, 3 weeks later, my sister sent a photograph that made the measurement impossible. It landed in our family group chat on a Sunday morning in November. A house. Not a house. an estate. Pale stone, black shutters, a 3-car garage, a red ribbon tied across double front doors like a commercial. Underneath it, Heather's caption. Mom and Dad said every sacrifice was worth it. Welcome to the Wallace house. I read it 3 times. Every sacrifice. I stared at those 2 words until the letters stopped meaning anything, and one question kept circling in the empty space they left. Whose? Thanksgiving answered nothing and confirmed everything. The new house was in Dublin, in one of the best school districts in the Columbus suburbs. Later, I would learn the number. $860,000. That day, I only knew what my eyes told me. A dining table with 12 chairs, a marble kitchen bigger than my living room. My parents, freshly moved into the finished basement suite downstairs. Multi-generational living, my mother announced, like it was a lifestyle choice and not a question mark. She stood at the head of that table and raised her glass. To family, she said, and to sacrifice. Nobody outside these walls will ever know what your father and I gave up to make this possible. Everyone drank. I watched my mother over the rim of my glass and did math that wouldn't resolve. At some point, Heather drifted past me with a tray of appetizers, glowing, and said the sentence I would hear differently for the rest of my life. Mom's always been good at saving. I don't know how she does it. I found my mother alone in the hallway later, near a wall of framed family photos, and I asked her directly, Mom, the house sale barely covered the debt, so where did this come from? Where did the money for all this come from? Her face changed the way weather changes, warm to flat in a single second. We managed our whole lives, she said quietly, each word placed like a brick. You don't need to understand it. You need to trust it. She walked back toward the party. I stood in that hallway a moment longer, and that's when I noticed the photographs. Family portraits, school pictures, holidays, marching up the wall in careful rows. And not one photo of me taken after 2016. The wall of our family simply stopped including me 1 year before the debt began. At the time, I filed it under coincidence. On the drive home, at a red light on Route 33, I opened my banking app. The automatic transfer sat there. Patient, scheduled for November 26th. My thumb hovered over the cancel button. Good daughters don't ask for receipts. That's what I told myself at every red light between Dublin and Grove City. I closed the app. I gave her 1 more month to tell me the truth on her own. Instead, in December, she handed me a folder. The dinner invitation from the November 28th call, the one that had sounded like a summons, turned out to be exactly that. Mid-December, Sunday evening, the long table in Dublin. When I sat down, there was a blue folder already resting beside my plate, squared to the table edge, waiting there before the salad. My mother let everyone eat first. She was patient the way a tide is patient. Then, over coffee, she laid her hand flat on the folder and slid it an inch toward me. It's just planning, sweetheart. Estate planning. Families who love each other put everything under one roof. Inside was paperwork to transfer the title of my house, into what she called the family's name. For simplicity, for the future, for taxes. It's not like you'd lose anything, Heather added, refilling her wine. It would still be your house. Basically. I looked around the table. Scott, my sister's husband, studied his dessert like it contained instructions. And my father. I looked straight at him and asked, Dad, what do you think about this? Earl Parman held my eyes for exactly 1 second. Then he stood up and went to the kitchen to get more ice for a glass that wasn't empty. I told them I'd think about it. It was the first time in 9 years I'd answered my mother with anything other than yes, and the word felt foreign in my mouth, like a coin from another country. At the front door, while I was pulling on my coat, my mother caught my wrist. Not held it. Caught it. Her fingers pressing down with a strength that didn't match her smile. "One more thing," she said, lightly, the way you mention weather. If anyone ever calls asking about your house, just say it's the family property. It's a tax thing. Who would call me about my house? Nobody, probably. She patted my hand where she'd gripped it. It's just a tax thing. Driving away, I checked the rearview mirror. She was standing at the front window, not waving, watching my car. And as I turned the corner, I saw her head tilt toward Heather beside her, already saying something I couldn't hear. A month later, they stopped inviting me anywhere. They came to me instead. It was a Saturday morning, January 17th. I was still in my robe with a cup of coffee when someone knocked. 3 hard knocks. A doorbell, then knocking again before I could cross the room. The moment I turned the lock, the door pushed inward and my mother came through it like weather through a broken window. She was past me and into my kitchen before I said a word. Heather followed, arms crossed, staying near the doorway. Through the front window I could see my father's truck at the curb, engine running, exhaust curling up into the cold. He never turned it off. He never came in. My mother slammed a folder onto my counter hard enough to knock over the salt. "Sign the papers right now." Her voice filled the house. I had never once heard her raise it in. "Transfer your house to the family. Your sister needs the money for her new life, and you owe us this." There were 2 documents in the folder. The top one was the title transfer from December. But as she shoved it toward me, the folder's second page slipped halfway loose. A different document, dense text, and in the corner, in blue ink, a handwritten number. $1,900. I had no idea what it meant. She snatched the page and pressed it back under the first. "That one's just a formality for later," she said. "Sign the first one today." She held out a pen. Her hand was shaking. I remember noticing that and not understanding it. My mother's hands never shook. "No." The word came out quieter than I expected and more finished. "No. This house is the one thing in my life you didn't plan. It stays that way." The pen dropped from her hand, rolled off the counter, and hit the floor. Neither of us picked it up. I watched my mother's face move through 3 seasons in 3 seconds. Sweetness, then frost, then something breaking open underneath. The slap came before I fully understood her arm was moving. The sound arrived first, then the heat, then a high, thin ringing in my right ear. My earring came loose and skittered across the floorboards. I didn't step back. I didn't touch my face. I stood with my hand flat on my own counter, in my own kitchen, and the room was very quiet except for the refrigerator humming and my father's truck idling outside. Heather picked the folder up off the counter. She looked at me, the way you look at a stain. "Just sign it, you selfish bitch. You've always been the useless one who never helps this family." Then they were gone. The door, the cold air, 2 car doors, the truck pulling away. My father never came inside. My father never turned off the engine. I didn't cry. I want that on the record. Not as a boast, but as a symptom. 9 years of practice will do that. I picked my earring up off the floor and I set it on the kitchen windowsill, where the light could reach it. Then I sat down at my table, opened my laptop, and typed a phrase into my bank's search bar that I had never once allowed myself to type. Transfer history. All. The 2 weeks after the slap taught me how efficiently my mother worked. She never called me. She didn't have to. The family called for her. My Aunt Joanne, my mother's younger sister, a kind woman armed with one side of a story, left me a voicemail I listened to standing at the sink. "Whatever happened, Lelia, she's still your mother. She says you turned your back on this family. She hasn't stopped crying." 3 missed calls, a cousin's text. The machinery of a narrative. Humming. I didn't argue with any of them. The person who keeps the papers always wins the first round. I intended to win the last one. On the morning of February 1st, I sat down to pay my mortgage, opened my email, and went still. Your scheduled transfer of $650 to Linda Parman has been completed. Dated January 26th. 9 days after she slapped me in my kitchen, my own bank account had sent her money anyway. An automatic payment I had forgotten to cancel, still faithfully executing a 9-year-old instruction. I stared at that confirmation for a long time. The slap hadn't made me cry. That email nearly did. The machine was more loyal to my mother than the truth had ever been. The next morning, I canceled it. The app asked if I was sure. My finger hesitated over the button, not out of doubt, out of the sheer weight of ending something that old. Then I pressed it. That night, I printed 9 years of statements and built a spreadsheet at my kitchen table, 1 row at a time, until 2 in the morning. When I finished, the screen showed 108 rows, 108 transfers. At the bottom, a total: $70,200. 108 rows, and one question I had never asked. Who exactly was I paying? I sat back in my chair. Somewhere in my exhausted mind, a practical thought surfaced. I needed someone who could read property records. And I realized my family contained exactly one such person. My Aunt Joanne's son, Mark, a real estate attorney down in Cincinnati. I never got the chance to call him first, because on Tuesday, February 24th, a stranger called me. I was in the staff break room at Crestline, half a sandwich in one hand, the microwave droning behind me, when my phone rang from a number I didn't know. I almost let it go. Good afternoon, this is Monica with Meridian Home Lending, Quality Assurance Department. I'd never banked with Meridian in my life. I said as much, politely, expecting a wrong number or a sales pitch. You're not a borrower with us, ma'am. This is a routine post-closing verification. I just need to confirm some information from a loan file. Papers shuffled. Can you confirm you rent the property at 214 Maplewood Court from Earl and Linda Parman for $1,900 a month? The break room went very far away. 214 Maplewood Court is my address. My house. And $1,900. I had seen that number before. Handwritten. Blue ink. The corner of a page my mother snatched back into a folder on January 17th, 3 seconds before she hit me. I put my sandwich down and made my voice level, the voice I use when a scan shows me something the patient hasn't been told yet. I don't rent this house. I own it. I've owned it since September of 2023, and I have never signed a lease with my parents. Silence, long enough that I checked the call hadn't dropped. Then, faintly, the sound of typing. Fast, urgent typing. Someone documenting in real time. I see. Monica's tone had shifted. The friendliness folded away, replaced by careful procedure. Thank you for that information, ma'am. This differs from the documentation in our file. You'll receive a written follow-up. She hung up. I stood in the middle of the break room while the microwave beeped, unattended, and my mother's voice from December replayed with terrible new clarity. If anyone ever calls asking about your house, just say it's the family property. It's a tax thing. She hadn't been rambling. She had been preparing me, which meant she knew this call would come. And I stood there with my ear still remembering January and asked myself, for the first time, the question that would carry me through everything after. What else has she done with my name? That evening, I called Mark. I opened with an apology for bothering him and the phrase, just a paperwork question. I told it in order. The folder, the number in the corner. Monica, the lease I'd never signed. Somewhere in the middle, the background noise on his end stopped completely. Lelia, stop. His office chair creaked, the sound of a man sitting up straight. Say that middle part again, the lease you never signed. I said it again. Okay. A pen clicked. Give me 15 minutes. Licking County put their property records online years ago. Everything your parents' house ever touched is public. I made tea. I didn't drink. 14 minutes later, my phone lit up with a screenshot. an official county page, stamps and reference numbers, and near the top, a heading in plain type. Satisfaction of more